All right, so at this point you should have passed in your sculpture with the found objects, and you're ready to go on to your next project. And the next project is called the recreation of a sculpture. So when you go on to Google Classroom, you will find a whole bunch of different materials that have to do with recreating a sculpture. One of the papers will look like this that has all the directions on it, and I just wrote in a little bit in pencil so that I could talk to you about it as we move along. And then you'll have an example. You'll have the paper that you're going to turn in, and you'll have some examples of different types of sculpture, and there'll also be an article on there, not really an article, but kind of a stream of different pieces of artwork that other people have made a copy of as well, just to help you to kind of get an idea of what we're doing. So what you're going to do is you're going to go onto your computer and you're going to type in iconic sculptures. And what it's going to do is going to bring you to a ton of different types of images. So for example, on this page right here, which actually I just copied right off from one little part of the computer, you'll see that none of these sculptures really look like one another. They've been made at very, very different times in history, from the ancient Egyptians to the Renaissance to the 1960s, and I think this one's probably the 70s or 80s. So there'll be all different types of sculpture that will come up, not one type, but all different types. From that, you can kind of decide, do you want something that is more modern, something that is more classic, something is more ancient, something that is scary, something that is funny, something that is beautiful. You can kind of narrow it down a little bit as to what type of sculpture you're going to copy. And then from that, what you're going to do is you're going to find out a little bit more about that particular sculpture. So for example, this is the one that I started. When I Googled iconic sculptures, I happened to come up with this little image right here. And even though that's not a sculpture, it's a drawing, I can always go back from this and I can go over to what the actual sculpture looks like. This really appealed to me because I felt like this is how we all kind of feel right now, like the world on our shoulders. We feel a little stressed, a little bit like things are overbearing at this time. So that's what appealed to me on that particular day when I Googled iconic sculptures. So this is the original sculpture, and you're going to tell me a little bit about it. So I know this is Atlas, and I know that it's an ancient Greek sculpture, and I know that this is the name of the person that created the sculpture. So I'm not even going to attempt that name. But sometimes when it's a very old sculpture, you may not know, historians may not know exactly who did the sculpture, but in this case we actually do know who did Atlas. And Atlas comes from Greek mythology, and supposedly Zeus punished Atlas and made him carry the weight of the heavens on his shoulder. So that's what that's all about. So my first idea was to have my husband put a mirror that we have in the dining room on his shoulder. It really stays on the wall, of course. I thought the mirror kind of looked a little bit like the coronavirus, so I was going to put little bits of tissue paper on it, orange and red tissue paper, to kind of look like the virus. But then what happened is I had asked him if he would be Atlas for this project that I had to do, and when he came downstairs to say, yeah, I'm ready to be Atlas for your photograph, he had the exercise ball in his hand, and it never even dawned on me, even though I pushed the exercise ball away from the TV almost every single day, that we had the perfect world right here with the exercise ball. So I took a picture of each one of these just because it was kind of different, and it was also interesting how his mind works different than my mind. I was overstretching, and he was quite literally right on task as far as what we could use for this particular sculpture. So your paper is going to look like this when you pass it in. The only thing is you're not going to have this one. You're going to have the sculpture that you find that already exists, and then you're going to have two pictures of the same reenactment. So I would have two pictures with the exercise ball, or I would have two pictures with the coronavirus mirror on the bottom right here. Okay, and you're going to do two different angles, so you can see that I'm right in front of my husband on these. Maybe if I had taken a picture coming over this way to show a little bit of the side, that would have been my second one. The same thing with this one right over here. And then on the very bottom, so this is what the paper is going to look like on Google Classroom. The only thing is I'll leave more of a space in here just so that it clues you into more of where you're supposed to put things. So in this space, you're going to put this, and then it says place 2 photos of your recreation. That's going to be the 2 exercise ball ones or the 2 coronavirus ones. And then you're going to give me a written response. And it says, what characteristics made you choose the sculpture you chose? Describe a challenge you encountered when creating your sculpture. And what do you like most about your recreation? So that will be down here someplace. And you will pass that into me on next Friday, which is April 24th. So I'll post this on Sunday. I'm going to try to always post on Sunday. Don't feel as though you have to do anything on Sunday. It's just because of how many papers I have to post for each class. I don't want to get behind on Monday and then not have things posted until Tuesday. So I'll post this on Monday. It will be due on Friday. We're touching based on some art history with you working on the computer. We're doing problem solving, just like you did with your found object sculpture. And then, of course, you're doing some art making as well. These are the steps that I went over, and these are the directions for how to pass things in, and you're going to pass it in through Google Classroom. I think that's about it. You can always send me any type of questions that you have as you go through the process. So this one's a little bit a shorter period of time. I think 5 days is going to work out better than 2 weeks. I think sometimes for planning of time, 2 weeks might seem like a little bit too long that I don't actually hear from you in that amount of time. Okay?